500. So for those people who have not been able to log on, we have live streamed this on YouTube. And if you, let's say, for example, if you've got friends saying that they can't get on, have a look at the top left-hand corner of your screen, and you can see that it is recording live. Tanisha will help giving out the link for this YouTube live stream as well. The second thing is that for any questions to the panelists, please use the question and answer function, which is at the bottom. It is the second function from the left-hand side. The chat function is only for a chat amongst the participants. Okay, please don't use that to ask questions. The questions for the panelists must come in through the Q&A. Thank you. So let me just set the scene for everybody so that we know what we're going to anticipate in the next 1.5 hours. COVID-19 has overtaken our lives, but it is an immediate and medium-term problem. Shrimp aquaculture's long-term problem and challenge is still the ongoing threat of disease, because it decreases our survival rates, it disrupts the production line, and it increases our cost of production. We need to address this weakling, and the diseases pose a huge challenge in production efficiency as well. This virtual conversation will focus on 3 major diseases: AHPND, EHP, WFS, and in general, management of all 3 diseases continues to be difficult for many farms, but there has been successes in some countries in living with this disease, these diseases. So for a start, Loc Tran will be beginning the session. He will share information on diseases impacting Asia's shrimp aquaculture. After which, we will have a panel discussion, and we will follow industry leaders from India, Indonesia, and Thailand. Together, they will discuss recent challenges and changes in disease mitigation and guide farmers on best practices to manage these 3 diseases in vannamei. Perhaps there is a best practice to be learned. We will end this session with some questions from the participants themselves. Now, the panelists that we have really require no introduction, but from the organizers, we have to thank all of them for spending time with us today. Loc Tran is basically a rock star in the international shrimp disease scene. Mr. Ravi Kumar, Konsurapat, and Pak Harris are celebrities in their own countries, but not only their own countries, but they're well known in Asia as well, because all of them, including Loc Tran, have taken their tour of presentations at the TARS conference itself. So I'm going to start off and allow Loc Tran to take over the microphone.
Thank you, Ronnie, and thank you all the participants to the TARS meeting this year. And basically, this is a very well organized meeting by TARS, and allow us to share with you our view on disease management. And for that, I will give a brief intro and a brief summary of major diseases affecting shrimp in Asia. I will not go into details about particular disease in terms of management. I will leave that for the panel discussion and Q&A. So basically in Asia, we are facing several diseases. In this photo, it represents for 4 major diseases that so far our laboratory have been working on. Believe it or not, we have 5 shrimp here originally from one stock, one batch of post larvae, and they were subjected to different pathogens. Starting from the letter number E, we have SPF, or disease-free animal. So we see the stomach, hepatopancreas, and midgut look normal. Meanwhile, the shrimp from the letter number D showing some abnormality in the hepatopancreas and the midgut. And this animal was affected with EHP. And EHP is a major problem now in Asia, causing severe slow growth in farm shrimp. The shrimp in the middle, letter number C, showing a typical EMS happen affected animal. So this disease originated from China back to 2009, and then quickly spread to several countries across Asia, and still a major concern for shrimp farming across the world. Now it's already spread to other continents, like to Latin America and North America. The letter number B is showing shrimp that were experimentally affected with white gut disease or white physis disease. And white physis disease has become a growing problem in several shrimp farming countries, including Southeast Asia, India, and so on. And letter number A showing a white spot infected animal. And white spot is still a major disease in Asia and across the world. This photo showing an EMS affected animal. So in the left and a normal shrimp in the right. So looking at the stomach, hepatopancreas and midgut, we can see the contrast between normal healthy shrimp versus EMS infected shrimp. So this is a very easy method for us to distinguish an infected animal versus a healthy animal. And the disease is now very well characterized to be caused by toxin governed by PAB produced by bacteria. And this toxin gene can be found not only in Vibrio parahemolyticus, several Vibrio can acquire this toxin gene and turn toxic. So let's move on to EHP. So EHP is a parasitic disease caused by a group of microsporidian. And this group of microsporidian attack the shrimp hepatopancreas, and they form spores inside the hepatopancreas cells. And the parasite absorb the nutrient, and that is why the shrimp don't have enough nutrient to molt and grow. So that is why the affected animal usually suffer from very slow growth and causing a lot of economic losses for the shrimp farming around the world. And we also found some complication of EHP infection and white physis. I will talk about that later. In the lab study, we could induce EHP transmission by doing what we call cohabitation. So you look at this photo in the right bottom corner. You see we have an aquarium with a small net suspended. So we just put the infected animal inside and leave the healthy animal outside. And very quickly, just only about 24 hours later, the shrimp from outside will be affected. So the route of transmission more or less is via the fecal matter from the affected animal. This is very clear. And once being affected, the shrimp will stop growing. In other words, the specific growth rate may reduce by probably 70%. For example, the ADG average daily growth of vannamei, typically about 0.3 to 0.35 grams a day, may reduce to 0.1 grams a day after being affected with EHP. So in this photo, we compare the size of 4 SPF shrimp and 4 EHP infected shrimp after 2 weeks of infection. And we can see the clear difference in terms of the size. I want to show you this surveillance conducted by my laboratory in Vietnam. So we checked for several thousand samples of post larvae and broodstock feed, including bloodworm, oyster, squid, broodstock feces, and the grow-out shrimp in the pond. And we found that the pathogen, both EMS and EHP, originated from the feed. So the live feed is really contaminated with the pathogen, and it passed the pathogen to broodstock. And then once the broodstock spawning, they will contaminate the eggs and the nuclei. And that is why the pathogen can pass to the post larvae and then to the grow-out shrimp. And we also see a growing infection rate in both post larvae and the juveniles. So this indicates that the pathogen can be accumulated in the system, including the hatchery and the shrimp pond. And now, believe it or not, if we just go to typical shrimp pond, grow our shrimp and collect the sample and run for EHP, it's very likely that about 60% chance that we pick up a positive result. So this is quite serious because it will decline the productivity of the pond. Let's move on to the white physis disease. So white physis cause continuous significant damage for shrimp during the culture. And there's a lot of controversy about the causation of white physis. So our laboratory have been working on this disease for a while, and now we will present you with what we have learned so far. So typically, white physis happen in shrimp pond of 30 days plus days of culture. And usually this is associated with eutrophication, dirty pond, algal bloom and crash. And usually with bad feeding management, overfeeding, the pond will show up with white physis. So it seems that more or less bacteria seems to be the most appropriate pathogen if there's a pathogen for white physis. And we work so hard on bacterial etiology theory. So we isolate different types of bacteria from white physis infected animal gut and enrich them, culture them, and soak in the shrimp feed and feed to the experimental shrimp. And at a certain level, the white physis will show up. So this is quite clear that bacteria at high density is a direct cause of white physis. However, we also find something very interesting, that when we do EHP challenge, so we infect shrimp with EHP, and it's quite likely that the shrimp affected with EHP will also show up with white physis. So what is the real cause of white physis? Bacteria or EHP? But so far, we found that if we do the EHP infection in a very clean environment, and we feed the shrimp with medicated feed or feed with antibiotics, just to intentionally kill off the bacteria, we don't see much white physis. However, a pre-infection of EHP may result in white physis in a Vibrio challenge later. And we see also a mass attack of Vibrio may also cause more susceptibility of the animal to EHP. So this is quite puzzling, quite confusing. But so far, we can conclude that Vibrio or bacterial damage is the direct cause of whitefaces because this is proven in the laboratory. However, if the shrimp are pre-infected with EHP, they will be more likely to suffer from whitefaces because the EHP infection causing the compromise, the damage of the hepatopancreas and leave an open door for any secondary bacterial infection. So that is why usually you may find more whitefaces in EHP infected pond. So we also find two types of whitefaces in the field. We call it recoverable with Vibrio or bacterial alone, and non-recoverable with whitefaces in combination with EHP, because the HP will be permanently damaged and the shrimp will also suffer from so much infection and they cannot recover and they cannot resume growing. We also find something interesting related to more intensification of the farming. One of the things that we observe is the disease called muscle necrosis. There's some literature review and some research done by other researchers showing that Vibrio havii can cause muscle necrosis. But we find that in intensive farming, we find this more. And sometimes the affected animal might be misdiagnosed. Sometimes farmers look at opaque muscle and say, this must be due to mineral deficiency. And they may add a lot of minerals in the pond, but it doesn't help. We did some histology analysis. We examined the necrotic muscle and we found a lot of Vibrio. And we could isolate the Vibrio from the necrotic muscle and do the infection. And we could repeat this disease very easily in the laboratory. So no doubt about it, this is a bacterial disease usually associated with intensive farming. And this disease can cause a lot of mortality as well. Could be like 0.5% every day, but the cumulative mortality in the pond could be very high. I can talk briefly about the management of this disease. Must be with more sanitation, more water exchange, better algae control, and improving the shrimp health in general. And sometimes if you start seeing this, you can start applying some disinfectants, for example, like iodine, just to reduce the pressure of Vibrio attack to the shrimp. So possible causation for muscle necrosis could be due to IMNV. So because we have attendees from different countries, I want to clarify this. The muscle necrosis disease I'm talking about is not about IMNV, because IMNV is reported in Indonesia, but we found IMNV negative for the sample that I show you. But it's more with Vibrio havii because it's confirmed by the laboratory challenge and laboratory analysis. And usually this is associated with thick algal bloom, low oxygen, low alkalinity, and more stress. Yeah, again, I want to show you how serious this disease can cause. And if you find some photo like this in your pond with moribund shrimp or freshly dead shrimp, it's quite likely that your pond is being under attack of Vibrio havii. Okay, with that, I want to close my presentation, a very short presentation, just a quick summary of what is going on in shrimp farming in Asia. Thank you.
Thank you, Loc. That is a wonderful summary. I'm very glad that we've got you on our lead speaker slot so that you can set the scene. So now we've seen what we have in Asia, not a very good scenario, but in individual countries, we do have different situations. So I'm going to ask Ravi first to tell us where we are today in India with these three diseases and what has changed since 2014 when AHPND came onto the scene. Over to you, Ravi. Ravi, your microphone is muted.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. See, whitefish syndrome and EHP is widespread across India in diverse environmental conditions and culture practices. And this year, around 60% of the farms affected by whitefish syndrome. And there are two different cases. The incidences, if you see, incidences of whitefishes were observed in 40% of the ponds after 50 to 60 DOC, and another 20% of the ponds after 20 to 30 DOC. Maybe it could be due to EHP gets transmitted through infected PL. Maybe that is the case, after 20 to 30. And if you see the year by year, the percentages are increasing, and the survival rates is coming down, and FCR is increasing, and cost of production is increasing.
Thank you, Ravi. So you've mentioned both EHP and white feces syndrome. Thanks very much. But if you look at between 2014 to today, in 6 years, have you seen any changes in terms of the disease situation?
Yeah, it's from since 2014, it's increasing every year. I would say maybe there is an increase of 10%, 10 to 15% every year is increasing. And also, if you see the productivity, shrimp productivity per billion of post larvae is coming down. That means the percentage of crop success, the crop success rate also is coming down year by year. And initially the farmers, they thought that, only this is more common in the pond with the high stocking density. And, the later years in 2016 and 2017, and, irrespective of the stocking densities, and we can see more disease outbreaks, and the survival rates are, there's a drop in survival rates every year.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Right, let's move countries. Let's go over to Surapat right now. Can you tell us what's happening in Thailand and whether you have seen any changes since 2014 in your disease situation?
Sawadee krap, everyone. About Thailand, the situation from 2014 until now we have three cases, right? AHPND, EHP and YVC. About AHPND, I can say that we have it lesser year by year until now. It seems to be not a big problem for us anymore. We still found it, but we can say that it's not create a big damage to the farmer as before or as it started at the beginning. But when we talk about the YVC and EHP, these two diseases, two things can say that it come along together as what Dr. Loc has been mentioned before. So we found an increment of the number of YVC cases. And it's not only a number or a percentage, but also the early date. In the past, you might find that case something like 60 DOC or 70 DOC, but right now it become early and more early, like 35 days instead of 60 days in the past. And when we check into the detail into the shrimp, we also found most of the shrimp that get the YVC, they also infected with the EHP before, maybe along together with the PL, or even they infected in the pond after stocking, because some pond is already outbreak with the EHP or some YVC in the last crop. So when moved to the new crop, if they not clean up the pond well enough. So the chance of EHP infection and white feces will be higher than the other pond and faster than the other pond. Yeah, roughly it's like this. And I can say roughly like what Dr. Ravi mentioned before, that about 5 to 10% every year increment. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Surapat. All right, let's move on to Indonesia and find out what's been happening in that country. Over to you, Haris.
You have to unmute your microphone first, Pak Haris.
Thank you, Ronnie. Hello, everyone. Yeah, thing that's different between 2014 and today, that the white feces related with the EHP and also bacteria is more and more in Indonesia now. Compared to let's say white spot disease, for farmer, white feces is much more tougher because white feces is not kill fast and also not kill all the shrimp. That's why farmer keep giving the feed and no ADG, no growth significantly. That's why make the FCR becoming very high, and also the sizes are not good as expected. It's why today in Indonesia the most concern of the farmer is for white feces. Secondly, since that Thailand and also Vietnam is more familiar and life together with happen life harmony with the happen. Now Indonesia is a newcomer and just started in 2019, and this year is becoming more and more. Even officially, the data is not. We don't have any official data about that, but in fact, that happen now is becoming a very serious problem for us and increasing from area to area. Yeah, that our problem today, Indonesian farmer today is mostly is happen and white feces. Thank you.
Thank you, Haris. But Indonesia has had a problem with IMNV before. Is it still prevalent in the country today? Still,
we still have IMNV, but farmer relatively can control compared to white feces and happen today. Still.
Okay, noted. All right. It's interesting that we've got actually more than the 3 diseases that we're talking about here, but a question comes in, which one comes first? And if you're infected with one, are you predisposed then to get the rest as well? So let me give you an example. If I'm hit with AHPND, am I then predisposed to get hit by EHP and WFS as well? Let me ask Loc to answer this question first, and then I'll pose it to the rest of everybody.
Hey, Ronnie, can you please repeat the question?
I certainly can. Right. The problem is that we don't only have a single disease today. We've got more than 3. So if you get hit by one, are you predisposed to get hit by the rest of it as well? So for example, if I have AHPND, will I be predisposed to get EHP, WFS, and maybe IMNV later on? What's your opinion?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting question because I agree that we are not dealing with single pathogen. We are dealing with multiple pathogen, and we see a lot of co-infection as well as a disease can bring down a shrimp immunity and let them become more susceptible to other disease. I will give one example. I used to think that white spot is only governed by temperature, but I found more and more cases that we usually see a big fluctuation in terms of bacteria in some ponds, sometimes like bacterial crash, algal crash, and then leading to white feces. Leading to white spot. Because those disease, those pathogen, causing some damage to the shrimp and leaving more loopholes for the virus to attack the shrimp, or it can bring down the shrimp immunity. And that is why the shrimp will be more susceptible to other disease. So we see one case of Vibrio and white spot. The other case is that we find that shrimp pre-exposed to Vibrio are more likely to suffer from EHP later, and vice versa. I explained that before already. And we also found, multiple different type of combination of different diseases. And sometimes we make a diagnostic and we found multiple pathogens. Yeah, so we have to think about disease management in terms of a big picture, not just like individual pathogen.
Thank you, Loc. Very good explanation. I'm going to take everyone else in reverse right now. So can I start with Haris first? In Indonesia, do you have co-infection of all these diseases and the farmer doesn't know what he's being hit with?
Yeah, I completely agree with Loc mentioned, and also your idea that it's just almost impossible that only one disease in our stream in the pond. But we farmer also strongly believe that it's almost to say easily that almost all the kind of disease is the first thing is of course coming from the some of them is coming from the PLs that related to some kind of virus and other Vibrio like happen. But mostly that the farmer aware is how to make sure that no algae blue crash and also bacteria crash. It's all will trigger all kind of disease, meaning that any kind of diseases have a trigger, of course, because from our experience, even SPF PL from the same batch, from the same hatchery, in the one pond is safe until harvest and other pond is not safe, meaning that the trigger from algae crash and also blooming of the bacteria suddenly is the key factor.
Thank you, Haris. Very good explanation. Right, I'm going to move over to Surapat next. What about Thailand? Co-infections, and how do the farmers handle this? Do they blame just one disease, or they say, the sky's falling, I've got everything?
It's similar to the other country. The cocktail of the disease happen everywhere, including in Thailand. But most of the case we found is we get the EHP first along together with the PL, and after stocking, we found that those shrimp is more vulnerable to the another disease than the shrimp that not get infection with the EHP. For example, like even in EMS or AHPND or white spot syndrome virus or other worse condition like heavy rains or plankton crash can make the shrimp susceptible or succumb easier than the shrimp is not getting the disease. When we talk about suppose that we're facing the EMS first, a chance of the EHP may be less because those shrimp will die first. We die early before the EHP can show their symptom. If the shrimp getting weak with get a problem of white spot syndrome virus, they will die before it can show the symptom of white feces or AHPND or EHP. So what I mean in Thailand, we can say that right now the big problem that we have to worry about is we have to make sure that the first step, EHP must be free in the PL, because it as the same as Dr. Loc has mentioned, he said that it left a door open for the other opportunistic disease to get in. So it's same to other country. Yeah.
Thank you, Surapat. Okay, I want to move over to Ravi in India next. In India, there is another special disease called running mortality syndrome. And this is something that you've had from early days. So Ravi, when you have a cocktail of all of these, what do the farmers do? Is there a certain recommendation that you give?
Yeah, it's as far as white fecal syndrome is concerned, Vibrios and EHP are the pathogens, associated with white fecal syndrome. As Dr. Loc Tran said, if it is only, caused by Vibrios, treatable. And also with the what we found in India, Vibriosis with the EHP, we are also grading EHP infection into 3 grades: EHP infection 1 and stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. So what we found in our R&D pond and in our customer pond, Vibriosis with EHP stage 1 is still reversible, and stage 2 and stage 3 little bit difficult for the reversible. With the good management practices, with the functional feed, with the probiotics. That's what we found. And something running mortality also related, with the poor pond bottom conditions and poor water quality parameters and the carrying capacity of the pond, etc.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Right, I know that we could easily carry on longer with that discussion, but I want to move on to the next question. And I'm going to start with Paharis first. So all 3 diseases have lowered survival rates. It has increased the incidence of forced harvests and culled ponds as well. So what is the real survival rate in Indonesia today? When I say real, I have to discount the bonus PLs that hatcheries give you. So when you order 100 PLs, normally the hatchery will give you 20, 30 extra. Please discount that and be real. I don't want to hear 110% survival rates because it's just not possible. Okay, so how has this affected your cost of production? If you have slides, please feel free to show them as well. Over to you, Haris.
Okay. Yeah. Cocktail disease, on even 1 or only 2 disease, affected a lot of survival. During the normal period, the survival in general is let's say 70%, but today is average is only 50% of the survival. Now the production cost is increased from normal situation is for 46,000 rupiah becoming more than 55,000 rupiah. It's mean around 10,000 rupiah per kg of production feed. And also, of course, with the that like I mentioned before about the white phases disease, that keep feeding and very low growth rate from EHP and also from white phases disease, creating the increasing of FCR becoming almost 1 compared to. That's why the production cost is also increased.
Right. So you're looking at between 15 to 20% increase in cost, approximately.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. Let me go over to Thailand. Surapat, what do you have? And again, if you have got any slides, please feel free to share the screen.
Okay. I don't have the screen, the PPT to share now. Just only want to inform you that after I got a rehearsal meeting with your team about 2 weeks ago, I tried to call and check with some source of my friend who are farmer in the field, asking that previously how many percent they get and right now how many percent they get. Okay, many people might know that in Thailand we quite get a good survival rate, like 80% up for many years in the past. Even we already discount from the bonus PL, but the information that I get from 20-something people now is widely ranged. Someone still able to meet 70 to 80%, but someone can get only 30%. And in the average, somewhere about 50 to 55%. That means we got the problem and reduced the survival rate a lot due to this group of the disease. Actually, when we talk about these 3 diseases, right now, most of the Thailand people worry too much, as we can see by our eye, is white feces. Because when we talk about EHP, that you need the microscope in order to look in, right, inside the body. But if you look at the chimp pond, okay, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you see the floating white fecal matter on the surface of the water. So this is a thing that we easy to detect, and we found it increasing a lot during the recent year, especially for this year, and especially during this season. Actually, every year in the past, I do the investigate. I found that during the rainy season, we found it more than the other season. But this year, it even double from the previous year heavy rain or monsoon season. So the production cost, sure, it increased. FCR also increased. The another problem is we got a lesser or smaller size that actually we can sell with a lower price. So because of that, the production cost, it seemed to be already exceeding the selling price already. So this is the thing that shrimp farmers suffering a lot in this year.
Sarapada, it's an interesting situation that you mentioned that you've got such a huge range from 70% down to 30%. Prior to 2014, I believe that Thailand could easily get 70 to 80% survival. This is before EMSA AHPND came in. But assuming that today, if you have 30% survival rate, what do you think your cost of production is? Would it go up by, 20%, 50%, or even double, 100%?
Even those cases, not that much. By my 23 source, I found only 2 cases that having 30%. But we can say that if production cost is 100, they can sell the production just only 30. So how many percent I cannot say. That means they lost for sure. They lost 3 times from the production cost, something like that.
Okay, interesting. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Can I move over to Ravi right now and in India? Again, if you have any slides, please feel free to share them.
I have a slides to share.
Good.
Can you see, Dr. Ronnie?
Not yet.
Yeah. Can you see, Dr. Ronnie?
Very good. Excellent.
Yeah. See, I have collected data from 800 plus ponds across India at different counts. Count 100 count, 80 count, and 60, then up to 30 count. And here you can see the survival rates because I divided into 2 categories. One is Andhra Pradesh and the rest of India. And here you can see the survival rate in normal ponds and also in white fisher syndrome ponds. And here, if you see the 100 count, there is no big difference. As I told you before, why? Because most of the incidences of white figures were observed at the DOC 50 to 60. Already that point of time, it's already, the farmer reached more than 100 count. So then if you see, then when it reaches 60 count, 40 count, and 30 count, and there is a sudden drop in survival rate. These mortalities are very slow and unnoticed. The survival rate at harvest is very low. So that's why the farmers are panic, and when they see, onset of white fiscal disease and loose shell, they prefer to harvest the pond. And here also you can see the FCR. And when it is the 100 count, there is no big difference. In the normal pond, it is 1, and in the white fecal affected pond, it was 1:1.5, 1:1.5. Then, when it reaches 30 count in normal ponds, it's almost 1.60. And, the other ponds, it reaches close to 2. The FCR is also increasing. And here you can see the cost of production in US dollar. And the cost of production in the normal pond for 100 count, it's 2.27 USD. And in the white fecal, it's, there's a slight increase. But when the count goes up, you can see the huge difference in the cost of production.
Thank you, Ravi. Very good. You've brought up a very important point here, and maybe that is why you have people choosing to harvest only after 90 days and going for smaller shrimp. And obviously they will get, much lower prices for it. But because the survival rates drop so much after those 90 days, everyone is heading for lower, smaller shrimp, right?
Yeah, you're right. Because up to 100 count, up to 10 grams, 10 to 15 grams, I would say the risk is very low. They don't have any problem with not much problem with the survival rate. When it goes up to the 30 count and the 40 count, they are having a problem with the survival rate. There is a drop of 20 to 30% drop in survival rate.
But that's interesting for India because I remember prior to 2014, India's major product size used to be very large shrimp. And this has changed a lot if you say that, now they're going for smaller shrimp. Is that true?
Yes, that is true. And also, here, some farmers with the low stocking density, the density, less than 30 pieces per square meter, they are going up to 30 count. They are producing up to 30 count. And even some farmers, very few farmers going up to 40 count. And some farmers, they are going for stocking density ranging between 40 to 60 pieces per square meter. They are aiming at 100 count, or maybe they do the partial count at 100 count. And the rest of the biomass, they prolong up to 30 count.
Okay, good. All right. Again, with this increase in cost of production, do you think that farmers are hesitant to go back into farming, that they're skipping cycles so that they don't lose money? I'm going to ask everybody in turn, but Ravi, since you've got the mic, can you go first?
Yeah, it's not like that. Their farmers are slowly, implementing better management practices and use of probiotics. Now, more number of farmers, they started using probiotic. And I myself, and we are also working closely with Dr. Loc Tran and developing SOP. And, we are working with Loc Tran for the past 3 years for fine-tuning SOP. And in our R&D farm, we also follow that probiotics, regular application of probiotics at 2 to 3 days intervals. And we found that, up to 30 count, even 20 count, we don't have any problem with the white figure disease. We do have a problem with the running mortality, but we don't have a problem with the white figure disease. And the trick is that, to keep the vibrio load under control throughout the culture period.
Right, thanks very much. Surapat, over to you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay, sorry. I have to unmute the microphone first. Can you repeat your question again?
Right. So basically what's happened is that you have a very wide range of survival rates leading to people wanting to harvest very small shrimp. But with small shrimp, it may not cover your cost of production. So do people in Thailand decide, hey, look, with lower prices, I'm going to skip this cycle?
Actually, many people decide to not that really skip, but reduce the stocking number of the pond. Actually, in the past, if we talk about 10 years ago, everyone know that entering into the monsoon season and continue to the winter season, this is a time that we have to skip or reduce the stocking, both stocking density and stocking number of the pond, in order to let the shrimp like a little bit relaxed and easy to manage during the hard season. And during the past 3-4 years, since we have a lot of new technology and very confidence in the quality of feed, of seed, of everything, so all the people go for full stocking, similar to the other season. But this year, Thailand people decide to come back to the normal condition like in the past, that reduce stocking density, reduce stocking number of the pond, and maybe let some pond take a rest or some farm take a rest for a while, because the price is also not that encouraged. Right now, if the problem is there, the price like this, altogether, even you pay a lot of effort, but at the end you get nothing, right? So better to wait and see. And since the COVID outbreak is also no one sure for the situation in the future, so people might checking not that very encouraged like before. Yeah. So some of them skip. Yeah.
Thanks. Haris, what about Indonesia? Do you find people skipping cycles purely because they can't make money?
No, of course not. No choice. The only option is go ahead. Yeah, similar with Thailand is lowering the stocking density. As you know, that Indonesia is mostly the intensive farmer is quite high, 150 to 200. No more, and they are more realistic to only stocking 100 to 125 in general in average of stocking density. They also more realistic not to push the feeding technique or feeding regime, because last time before EHP and also whitefish, they push the feeding with the more and more by using the automatic feeder or manually to get the maximum of ADG for the shrimp. No, they are more realistic that feeding more moderate and also lowering the feed amount. That's why the water more controllable, more light, not so dense, and also plankton bloom is more controllable. Meaning that the farmer no is more conservative and also more concerned about the using of let's say reservoir. Last time, sometimes they not take care of the water in the reservoir. No, they are spend more pond to treat the water before in the grow out pond. Meaning, firstly, is lowering density and also lowering the feeding method. I mean, amount of feed is not so aggressive, and also the growth rate is not so to push to be higher to get the better size.
Thank you, Haris. Excellent. Okay, I'm going to move on to the last question. And I'm going to take Ravi first, then Saurapat, and then Haris. And this one, I want Loc Tran to weigh in as well. So he will go last. So Ravi, you first. There have been reports of farmers doing well and living with all these diseases. What mitigation procedures work for them? And would you recommend this to the other countries as well? Ravi, you first.
Yeah. See, my suggestions are pond preparation has to address the problem of EHP, okay? And water treatment procedures have to be changed, keeping the farm location in view. That is very important. And also regular application of probiotics and right type of probiotic and right application method. That is also we found that very important. We apply very small quantities of probiotic at regular intervals, at 3 days of intervals. And this application should start minus 10 days of stocking. That is 10 days or 14 days prior to stocking. That is very, very important. And it should continue. We have to continue throughout the crop. And as I told you, we are also working with Dr. Loc Tran. And what we have developed SOP, for example, our culture DOC is 100 DOC. Up to 50 DOC, we are using water probiotic after fermentation. That is 2 times water, then 1 time soil application. Then when the feed input is very high, after 50 DOC, between 15 and 100 DOC, 2 times soil probiotic and 1 time water probiotic. That means at the regular intervals of 3 days. And no need to use the very huge quantities of probiotics. Each applications we are using only 100 to 200 gram of probiotic after fermentation. And if it is a soil probiotic, I recommend to go for anaerobic fermentation and application is at night time. And if it is a water probiotic, aerobic fermentation and application is during daytime, morning 9 to 10 a.m. So these simple procedures, and also the PL, checking of the PL quality. Here in India, the farmers, they used to go for first screening of PCR, screening for viruses. So my advice is farmers should go for the Vibrio test first. If it is Vibrio pass out, then go for PCR. Then the third one is go for the other stress tests and etc. And this kind of selection of the PL is very, very important. Then the probiotic applications with the good, better pond management practices, very simple steps, and we can overcome the problem of white fecal syndrome. And we also following these practices almost for the past 2 years, and almost 6 crops in our R&D pond, in our customer pond, where we follow this protocol. We don't have any problem with the white fecal disease and EHP. We do have problem with the running mortality. That is, after when the animal reaches 25 plus grams, we have that problem. That is something related to the carrying capacity of the pond.
Thank you, Ravi. Excellent. I'm going to move over to Sorapot for Thailand. What works in Thailand? What procedures have you done in order to get 70% survival and above?
Okay, let me share some screen. When we talk about the disease problem, we have to identify or talk each separately. In the case that we found the white feces, as everyone knows that this is cocktail of many triggering or root cause. And in Thailand, we roughly can assume that there's a chance of the 8 root causative to triggering the white feces or white fecal matter. For example, like something problem from the feed, especially under the rainy season, that it might contribute more due to the high moisturizer in the air, high humidity in the air. Vibrio is one of the part, hydrogen sulfide gases, plankton crash, EHP, antibiotics. If you use a long time of antibiotic more than 10 days, it's also a chance of white feces. Some group of the bacteria has been identified recently, and another thing is precarin. So all of this together, it might not come with a single factor. In each case that you found the white feces, you might see a cocktail of 2 or 3 or 4 in combination. So you have to identify the problem in your farm and fix it point by point as much as possible. This is the way that we use in order to manage or mitigating or reducing the critical of the white feces. Another thing we talk about the EMS, we have to do what necessary to do. We know that the EMS can come to the farm by PL, by water, by the pond bottom, by some case when chimp getting mold, and they might eat because when chimp molding, their stomach will be empty for a while, and that is a chance for the Vibrio bacteria or the AHPND bacteria to entering into the mouth and in stomach, and finally colonize in the gut and destroy hepatopancreas. And also we have to control animal health with some of the technique like this, like PL, we go for PL selection method. Nursing the shrimp before stocking water, we do the cleaning, or since we know that AHPNs is work well or effective in saline water, we go for low saline water. Good microbiome, good probiotic, and monitoring, check the water bacterial count, and more frequent than before. At the bottom, we do the sludge removal, PEL lining, or improving oxygen more than before. For example, during the molting, we have to remove the sludge because we worry that the shrimp will sink at the sludge area, and the first meal after the stomach empty, they might take in some contamination bacteria. Also, establishing the good bacteria colony by adding the good probiotic at the first meal after molting, for example. And about animal health, we improve environment. We provide some feed supplementation along with some like a functional feed. Also monitoring with lab. And about the EHP, we considering EHP as something that like a parasite or human worm that actually same to what Dr. Loc mentioned before, that it try to compete with the energy, with the nutrient, with the anything that the shrimp already extract from the feed, and try to keep storing in the hepatopancreas. But when EHP is there, it taken it away. That's why the shrimp cannot use those resources for creating the flesh or provide the immunity or to become an energy. So what we have to do when we found this case happen, if it already severe, and if even you try something, it will not getting back fast enough to get a good price, we better to harvest. But if there's still a chance for us to continue, for example, the size is quite good. It happened during 60 DOC, and if we can make the chimp getting in the good size, or size just go down, we have to make chimp firm back in order to get make it ready to harvest, get a good size. What we do at the moment is we try to add in some easy digest protein. For example, like what I recommend to my friend is fish fermenting, fish fermentation. We have okay, a formulation is like this in the table on the screen. Like we use this product. in order to make the fish getting fast digest or easy absorb protein to boost their body up and get the flesh firm. Then we can harvest. We don't have some special technique to kill the EHP yet, even though we heard from someone that they can use something to control the growth of the EHP, but it's not how to call it, it's not confirmed yet. Someone said that there are some group of bacteria that can interfere the multiplication or the growth of the EHP. This is for the shrimp that already stuck in the pond and contaminate with the EHP and cannot grow. We use this formulation. But in the pond that already contaminate with the EHP, we have a solution to clean up the pond. Yes, like this. To clean up the pond, make it sure that there will be no any EHP left over when you're going to stock the next crop. So we use, this is quite general. Most of people who join with the seminar will know about this. Like we use potassium permanganate or chlorination or how to call that one, sodium hydroxide or caustic soda. Sorry, the screen is off. What happened? Do you hear me? Sorry.
Yes, we can hear you well,
Okay,
and we can
okay,
see the
okay.
screen as well.
Okay, okay. Because I cannot see on of your face right now. So we follow by the professional instruction as I show over here, in order to avoid the EHP contamination in the pond and also for the bottom line of the page. Yeah, this is the thing that we do. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarapat. I'm just curious, when you mention fish fermentation products, is that coated on the feed before feeding, or do you recommend that feed millers include this as a feed ingredient?
We add it mixed with feed prior to feeding.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Got
Yeah.
it.
Like this. We ready to feed 20%, make the fish soluble 5% of the feed weight, and 2 meals a day, for example, night and morning meal, for example. And
Okay.
also in this soluble, we suggest to add in like a trace mineral, vitamin, sugar, salt, and probiotics along too, in order to bring back the health of the animals.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Okay, I'm going to move over to Haris. Haris, tell me what works in Indonesia for the successful farms. What do they do right that the others are not following?
Yes. You hear me? Hello?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay.
Can I ask
Yes.
Sarapat to remove your screen share, please? Stop sharing.
Tuan Sarapat? Hello?
Have we lost Sarapat?
Okay.
Yes, we've got you. Can you stop your screen share, please?
Yes. It's hang for a while. I'm not sure how to stop.
Right, that's it. Very good, thank you.
Okay.
Over to Horace.
Yes. See, as you know that the Indonesian farmer now reducing the incidence of disease, EMS, white faces disease, and also other kind of disease. Firstly, we realize that disease is a combination between the animal and the environment. Firstly, about the animal, no farmer and also all the hatchery of Indonesia is using a PCR test as a mandatory before releasing the fry to the farmer. From environment point of view, we Indonesia farmer also realize that the all kind of incident mostly is triggered by the blooming or abundance of the Vibrio and also dangerous bacteria. It's caused by the blooming of the organic material. That's why any kind of management practices is how to method is how to reduce the loading of organic material in the pond. Of course, firstly as a chlorination. Secondly, is to make sure that the plankton bloom is relatively lighter than before, meaning that the more exchange water and also more siphoning. Last time Indonesia siphon after 35 or 40 days, but now is even starting from 20 days, they start off siphoning pond bottom to make sure that the accumulation of organic material can be reduced and reduced and reduced. That's why the plankton is not so blooming, and also bacteria also not blooming. Then now is we realized that by using a nursery pond is not new technology, it's maybe 20 years ago, but now Indonesian farmer start of using a nursery pond to make sure that the PL is strong enough for 20 or 25 days before releasing to the grow out pond. And not so popular, but no farmer more realized that the nursery pond can help to make sure that the stream is strong enough before grow out pond. And of course, also the functional feed with any kind of approach from probiotic and also any kind of additive to the functional feed. More and more feed miller in Indonesia introduce a functional feed to preventing from any kind of disease. And of course, as I mentioned before, that farmer now is not really aggressive in terms of stocking density. It's back to the normal 100 to 120 per meter square, and also they're reducing the dose of the feed. In the feeding time, one until 30 days is we call a blind feeding. The blind feeding dose is about 60 to 70% compared to normal situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Haris. Okay, Loc, it's your turn now. You see more than these countries, and furthermore, Loc, you are also very you're very you travel around Vietnam quite a lot. So again, you have to act as a spokesman for Vietnam. What are the good farmers doing right, which you can share with the other countries as well? Over to you, Loc.
Okay. Yeah, somebody asked me about the recipe of being a successful farmer in Vietnam. And to be very realistic, I would say first is money. Because now in Vietnam, we understand that the disease pressure is very, very high. And we cannot go with the traditional type of farming and being successful now. So a lot of farmers become more consolidated, and they put more investment in farm engineering, better farm design, better water treatment system, and better ponds that allow them to do multiple phases farming. In the past, we just think about, okay, let's get a plastic line pond. And then they realize that there's a lot of problem coming from, let's say, nitrite toxicity during the culture. They split the farm the farming into two phases. First with the nursery and then the grow out. And then they realize they still have problem. So they have more and more shortened phases. For example, now they can go with 4 phases farming. So first they may start with nursery phase for about 25 to 30 days. Stocking with post larvae, and after 4 weeks, they can harvest 1 gram animal. The stocking density could be as high as 2,500 to 3,000 animals per square meter. And then for the second phases, they can farm at from 300 to 500 pigs per square meter for another 30 days. And very interesting that after 30 days, the nitrite start to kick in, and then they will transfer the shrimp to phase 3. At phase 3, they may go with about probably around 150 to 200 pigs per square meter. So after completing the phase 2, the shrimp is already somewhere around 8 to 10 grams. And after another 30 to 35 days, the shrimp will reach about 25 to 30 grams. And then they can decide to do partial harvest and keep the rest and grow them to probably 30 to 40 grams, even 50 grams, or even bigger. Or they may transfer to the shrimp to a very big pond, could be an earthen pond, and farm shrimp at 50 to 70 pieces per square meter, and allow the animal to grow to 40 to 50 plus gram. And by doing so, they can significantly reduce the risk of disease, of nitrite toxicity, and vibriosis. We also find that we can also reduce the damage of EHP, because usually when the shrimp is farmed under stress and high in density, the disease will show the damage. And when we transfer the shrimp to a bigger environment, less density, less stress, they will resume growing. You can do a simple experiment that you can take an EHP infected animal and throw them to the reservoir. They will resume growing. Yeah, because when the stress is gone, the shrimp will resume growing, and the pressure of the disease is less. For earthen pond culture, we are following Mr. Ravi Kumar protocol, that we are reducing the stocking density, in the past from 100 pieces per square meter, now down to 40, 50 pieces per square meter. We prepare the pond more properly, a lot more properly. We are taking care of EHP. A lot of my customers send sludge sample to the lab for analysis for EHP prior to stocking. And if the pond is contaminated with EHP, they will lime the pond very thoroughly and have a crop holiday before the next crop. And they apply probiotic on a very regular basis and really take care of the shrimp. So by doing all of those, they can really reduce the risk of getting lost from the disease. But that is the practice from good farmer. And we still have to spread the success story to as many farmers as possible, as well as provide them with more resources for them to practice those new protocols. It's still a long way to go, but we are seeing a lot of successful farmers in Vietnam nowadays.
Thank you, Loc. That's a very good recommendation. It's more like a thinning process, reducing stocking density as the shrimp grows to a much bigger size. Okay, right. We've come to a time right now whereby we're going to accept questions from the participants, and I'm going to ask them to panelists. But before we do that, can I just remind the TARS Secretariat, both Tanisha and Irene, we do have poll questions, and that has to be sent out to the participants as well. So can you do that on your part? Let me just run through a few questions here. I'm going to pose a question to Ravi first. Ravi, a question for you. In India, can shrimp suffer from WFS and running mortality syndrome at the same time?
Yes, most of the ponds, it's a combination of both. We have, problem with white fecal syndrome and also running mortality. But the difference is the running mortality in most of the ponds, it has been noticed only when the shrimp reaches 20 plus grams. It's not early stages, most of the cases. So when the shrimp reaches 25 plus grams, then that time running mortality starts.
But what about WFS? Does it start very early, as early as 30 days?
WFS, there are two different cases. One, as I told you before, most of the incidences were observed after 50 to 60 DOC, most of the cases. And some cases, few cases after 20, 30 DOC. Maybe that I feel that it's EHP gets transmitted through the contaminated PL.
Okay, noted.
Yeah, and if it is 20-30 DOC and difficult to carry out that culture up to even up to 10 grams, and it's very difficult, and the survivals are very low, and the farmer ultimately they will be in a loss.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just extending this question over to Haris for Indonesia. Can a shrimp suffer from WFS and IMNV at the same time?
Yes, yes, yes.
So which disease do you blame it on? Do you call it an IMNV problem or do you call it a white feces syndrome problem?
It's quite difficult, but mostly farmer is more concerned on white spot syndrome types, because it's the mortality is faster and much more bigger than IMNV.
Right. Okay. And let me just get this off my screen first so that I can see Surapat's face. Now,
Okay.
Surapat, a question for you. At below 100 count, if the shrimp is infected with EHP, how much average growth rate will there be, whether it's weekly or ADG?
ADG should be lesser than 0.2 and even low to 0.1.
And what is normal?
The normal one is about 0.25 up to 0.3
Okay, all right.
per day.
Thank you very much. Okay. Next question, and I think I'm going to pose this question over to Loc. Loc, for EHP, can we detect EHP infection at a PL stage? So if I were a farmer, I want to buy a PL 10, 12, can I detect EHP infection then?
Okay, so basically in the chart I show you that we could detect EHP in various samples, including broodstock feed, broodstock feces, nuclei, and of course post larvae. But if you choose small post larvae, sometimes you may overlook the pathogen because due to the detection limit of the methods. So I would recommend that you choose the big size host larvae for sampling. And you may request the laboratory to do real-time diagnostic or nested PCR.
Thank you very much, Loc. There is an associated question with this, so I'm going to ask Loc for you to answer this as well. You showed shrimp with the letter B for Bangkok, for example, in your slide. If the polychaetes fed to the broodstock are the cause for EHP and EMS, why do hatcheries still use them?
Okay. Okay, very good question. Because so far, science is way behind the production. Because so far, we don't really have a complete, how to say, artificial diet for broodstock. So we still have to rely on fresh feed. And the fresh feed can be from local sources. And bear in mind that usually the area, the estuarine area near the hatchery, usually near the farming regions, and the effluents coming from the farming region will contaminate the area, and we will contaminate the food chain, including bloodworm, oyster, and squid. But because so far we don't have alternative, there are some broodstock feed, but it's just for partial replacement. It's not for 100% replacement. And for that, I would recommend there's a few methods for you to reduce the risk of the disease. So first, you may need to process the live feed very carefully. For example, with the squid and oyster, you need to remove the viscera. You need to remove the intestine of those animals and the feed content, whatever inside the viscera. And you must wash it very carefully, and then you may chop into small pieces and put in the refrigerator at least overnight. So after being frozen, it will kill off the EHP spores. For polychaetes, it will be a little bit more difficult because if you freeze the polychaetes, the shrimp may not like it. So one way for you to reduce this risk is to have a water flow through for the polychaetes at least 12 hours. We did some research in our laboratory. If you do a water flow through for 12 hours, you significantly reduce the density of pathogen, including bacteria and potentially EHP. And during that 12 hours, if you have access to a lab service, you can send sample for EHP diagnostic. And if it is EHP positive, you cannot feed that live batch of polychaetes to the push stock, but instead you may put it in the refrigerator for at least overnight. You know, let it thoroughly frozen, and then you can thaw and feed to the push stock. And that is exactly the practice that we are doing. We have been doing in our hatchery for the last few years, and we could quite successfully control EHP. It would be a little bit more laborious, but I think it's worth it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Loc. There are a lot of questions from our participants on the efficacy of functional feeds, whether it works or it doesn't work. So I'm going to ask this question to our two feed companies. So Ravi first, and then Haris after that. So Ravi, can you go first? Do functional feeds work? And if they do, why aren't more people using them?
Functional feeds definitely offer a solution. I would say in combination with better management practices and also with probiotics, we are getting very good results. Okay, for example, if you use only functional feeds, then you get results. But if you want the excellent results, then you have to have better management practices, and also along with the probiotics, and the water quality management is also very important. And when the farmer is using functional feed, very stringent feed management is very essential, because functional feed, any company, they are using high profile amino acid, and the protein content is slightly higher than the normal feed. So that case, the farmer, they have to go for very stringent feed management. That is very essential. And if you see, the farmer should not see the cost of the functional feed per kg. They have to see the unit cost. Actually, for example, our company, we have two different feeds. We have a normal feed and functional feed. So normal feed, when the animal is 10 gram in size, our recommendations normally 24 to 26 kg for 100,000 animal. Whereas the functional feed is only 18 kg for 100,000 animal. If you see, the unit cost of the functional feed is much lower than the normal feed. So my recommendation is functional feed with the good management practices and with the probiotics, and it gives good results.
Thank you very much, Ravi. Haris, from your side, you're a feed miller as well?
Yes, exactly same like Ravi Kumar answered that still we cannot hang depend only on the functional feed. Is of course a combination with the water quality management and pond management in general. I have a very strong evidence of data that one farmer has a very success of preventing from AHPN and other disease with the proper management, and other pond with completely the same using of a functional feed with the same dosages also completely fail. That's why we cannot only depend on one factor of a functional feed. Yes, also that functional feed is more expensive. About in Indonesia is about 15 to 20%, but using of a dose of functional feed is not 100% and during whole crop, but only half of crop, and also half percent is we still mixing with the regular feed. That's why even the price is in 20% more, but in fact the by using functional feed and regular feed, is increasing of feed cost is not significantly increase.
Thank you, Haris. While I've got you on the microphone, I'm going to ask you this question, and then I need Surapat to follow up on the very same question as well. Is there clear evidence that high levels of soybean meal in feeds lead to white feces? So, is white feces associated with high utilization of soybean meal? Haris, you go first.
Some suspect that idea, but so far I'm not really follow the idea. The suspect is maybe coming from the idea that phytase or any kind of anti-nutritional factor in soybean that can affect to the ability to hepatopancreas of the shrimp to digest the feed that contain a lot of soybean meal. I'm not follow that kind of idea. Maybe okay. Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Haris. Over to Surapat. I know that there are a lot of people who speculate on this in Thailand.
About this case, during the past 4 or 5 years ago, many people talk and suspect on this and jump into the set up the meeting in order to identify whether it's real or not real. But at the end, we found that the most important thing is not about the soy meal, but it's about the nutrient profile in the feed. Right now, we move to talk about the nutrition profile in the feed, whether it's perfect or good enough or not. Suppose that nutrition profile is good enough. So even the soybean meal has been mixed over there, the shrimp is also can grow up significantly. But if the nutrition profile in the feed is not good enough, even there are no soybean meal in the feed, the performance is also not good. So in the past, yes, many people suspect on that, and until now, not a proof conclusion or a clear conclusion yet. But however, we move to talk about the nutrition profile.
Loc, I think you raised your hand. Do you want to contribute to this question as well?
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the soybean meal and white feces, because so far at our laboratory, we also work with different formulation. And at high inclusion of soybean meal, we don't see it associated with white feces, at least in the laboratory. Okay, but I agree with Safarat that is more with the nutrition. If we can formulate the diet well or not, and it will affect the performance of the shrimp in terms of growth rate. But I don't see it really strongly associated with white feces. And also one of our protocol is that once we start seeing white feces caused by bacteria, we can produce what we call fermented soybean. And we can use the fermented soybean as a treatment for gut bacterial disease. So I don't see a strong correlation of soybean meal and white feces. But we agree that now we are using more and more soybean, and it could be difficult for shrimp to digest. So that is why I see more and more feed mill are using fermented soybean. So that could be a good solution.
Thank you very much, Loc. Right. The next question, and this will be our last question, actually came in when one of the participants registered. So I have to show you a photograph, And I'm going to share the screen so that you can have a look at a problem shrimp, a diseased shrimp. So just give me 1 second and I'm going to share this with you. Right. This is black tiger. It is about 20 pieces per kilo. The appearance is normal, but after cooking, the meat is very mushy and the muscles appear to tear very easily. It doesn't happen to the whole pond. About 5% would be affected. Now, who wants to go first? Does anybody want to try? And I'm going to do Loc because, you know, I think it would be easier for you to answer that question. So Loc, you go first, please.
Okay, so basically, if I were Dr. Liner, I may ask the same thing, that I need to have a light shrimp, and I want to perform histology to see if there's any suspicious thing inside the muscle. It could be parasite, it could be some type of infection, and cause the disintegration of the muscle fiber. Because there are, you know, they're well documented. There are some parasitic disease, for example, microsporidium, attacking the shrimp muscle, can cause the disintegration of the muscle. But from the cooked shrimp like this, it would be very difficult for us to come into any conclusion.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody else wants to comment on this? Nope. Okay. Right. I will stop sharing the screen here. One last question. This just came in, and this is for Loc as well. When shrimp are infected with AHPND, mortality comes very quickly in about 9 hours. Are there any signs that we can see in the shrimp that helps us observe the shrimp earlier so that we can take remedial action quickly?
Okay, so from the some very first slide I show you, so there is some sign for us to detect any abnormalities in shrimp. So what you should do every day is to check the shrimp very carefully. So it could be from the siphoning, and if you detect any mortality, or you may throw a cast net and collect at least 100 shrimp and put it in a bucket with some water, and you check for the digestive tract, including the hepatopancreas, stomach, and midgut, to see if any abnormalities. So if you find any shrimp with empty gut and atrophy hepatopancreas, you can do a simple dissection, and you may crush the hepatopancreas to see the content from inside the hepatopancreas if it turn white. If it turn white, it's a strong indication that the shrimp might be suffering from EMS, and you have to turn on EMS emergency mode. So you have to follow all the procedure to stop the mortality. This include reduced feeding, water exchange, and some prophylaxis.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's all about early detection.
Good. Sarapa, you raised your hand.
Let me add in a little bit that the normal practice, what we do in Thailand is we drop the empty check tray in the rim or in the edge of the salad area in the middle of the pond. And we lift it or check it quite frequent. Once we found some shrimp over there, because that is a bad area, actually just only a weak shrimp or infected shrimp or sick shrimp will stay there. Once we found it, we can take it and identify as what Dr. Loc has been mentioned before. Then this is one of the way to detect it earlier than before it start to outbreak. Yeah, this is one of the method. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, we've come to the end of our leading conversations session. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the TARS Secretariat as well as Zurida for making this possible. And then last but not least, I have to thank all our panelists from Mr. Ravi Kumar, Paharis, Kunsarapat, Loc Tran. In my eyes, you are all rock stars. Very well done. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a good evening. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.